streamlining business processes, boosting team efficiency and accessibility. In this episode, John Tonkin from Brain in a Box explores the best practices for making team systems accessible and engaging. He shares innovative ways to integrate systems into daily workflows, from intranets to visual aids, ensuring seamless team involvement and continuous improvement. It's an episode you don't want to miss. I'm your co-host, Anthony Pearl, and this is the Systems from the Box podcast. Let's start unpacking. John, something we've explored in a way in other podcast episodes, but I think we need to get into a little bit more detail in, is the best way to make systems available to your team. Because I know when you talk about capturing them originally, you're talking about post-it notes and flip charts and things, but that's great to capture it initially, but then what? How do you actually make these systems available to everyone?
So they can be available through an intranet, which means that anybody who has access can go there, look at it, watch the videos, see the flowchart, check this document, fill in that form, do all those things. But then sometimes you might say, wait a sec, we're in a patisserie and it's very difficult to do that. We could have a laminated poster on the wall. It could be a video that shows, it could be anything that makes it so that people can access it easily, go from the beginning to the end, and have something that makes it easy to go back to the beginning and do it again, because people don't learn on the one run through, and then make it so we can track everything. I suppose that would be the critical thing there. So really the major thing is it has to be accessible to the people who will use it in the context of that using it. So it's not, I'll go into another room and learn all about it, and then I'll come back here and do it. We want those two things to be as close as they can together.
So say that's an interesting thing. You talk about intranets, and intranets have been around for a long time, but I often question how often people actually use them, because I've worked in various companies over the years, and they've got an intranet, but nobody except the senior management who are putting stuff in there for people to read actually ever goes in there.
Yep. And one of the answers to that is to make it the central point for everything. So don't just make it for your systems. Make it where you put your social group announcements. So, hey guys, we're going out. Instead of announcing that over the tannoy or going out and speaking to people in the lunchroom or something, put it on the intranet, and then make a point of saying, hey, check out the intranet, something you want to see for Thursday, and so on. So make it show things that are useful. This is where you can put team profiles. This is where you can put employee of the month or team member of the week or whatever you might do there. This is where you can say, hey guys, we've got some new ideas for a product we're looking at. It's on the intranet. So make it so that this becomes the natural focus of where things go. So when things are our new calendar for the month or something like that, or the days when different people are working, put it up on the intranet. Observe privacy and so on. So we're not being silly there, but make it so that as many parts of the business that the team needs to see are on that intranet. And that makes it so that people are more likely to go. So now, hey, are we going out? Where are we going? We're going out for team lunch on Thursday. Which restaurant was that, or which pub was that, or whatever? The answer's on the intranet. So everything is going to be, have you checked out that? So again, when we create our intranets for clients, we recommend they give it a slightly humorous name, not something overly serious, because then you can say, we got a client and we named the intranet Smarty Pants, so that when people said, hey, how do I do this? I don't know if you are Smarty Pants, and so on. It's just an easy thing to do. We've got another one where it's called the Iron Throne. And just all these, a little bit of humor means that no one's going to take it, get upset if you make fun of it or anything like that. But the intranet needs to be a person it's almost got a personality, and it has to have that attraction of its own. So everything that people will want to see about the company, new rules for parking, or we've got 3 people going away to the blah, blah next week. Here's where they are on the intranet.
The great thing about that kind of naming idea, and I've done it as well, is that it brings the team involved in some way, because if you allow them to do it, I know we had an AI tool that we were using that allowed it to give it any name. And for a period of time, we did give it a name that my team implemented, and it probably shows that the average age of my team was a little bit younger than me because they chose to call the AI Taylortron, being Taylor Swift fans. But the interesting thing,
Oh,
of course, about that, it kind of backfired because the AI would sit in rooms where people would go, who is this person that is sitting in there? And they didn't realize it was an AI tool. So you have to be a little bit mindful of that and where you use it. I think, I imagine
yeah.
you don't want to go public and saying, oh, Smarty Pants told us to do this again. You're talking about a team member in that way. So I imagine there's a bit of a balance in
Yeah.
the way that you do things, but it is a great way of getting people
Yeah,
involved and energized about what they're doing.
definitely. And there's always that little bit of sensitivity. We will always recommend don't name it the intranet based on something that's really close to your heart, because then you're going to be really upset when somebody makes fun of it in some way or something like that. So there are a few little sensible rules around that, but the principle holds true. Make it so that there's a reason why people will want to come and look at the intranet. Shifts are put up there, or something that everyone wants to look at is right there. And use the banners. Sorry, one last thing. Use the banners. So, across the top, you can put a banner that says, hey, check this out. And there's a link to that page and something so that when they get there, there's that little, oh, will I watch it? Yeah, I'm going to click on it. And they go there and have a look at something. And so if you keep it changing, keep it moving, the same as everyone does, like shops, they move the shelf contents around so that people go there, oh, it's changed. And as they're walking around, they'll see things they haven't seen before. So a lot of those principles apply.
John, you talk about the intranet as well in there and where we were at before. And tell me, how important is it to, I mean, is an intranet compulsory to have when you're talking about developing systems, or there are other ways that you do it? Because it's kind of like, I guess we've talked in a previous episode about a system for creating systems, but now we're talking about a system for, integrating people with the systems. And is the intranet the only answer?
It's not the only answer. It's a very good answer. But I can imagine the company I was working in last week was in the country. It was a number of big production bays, which were like big half, dome shaped buildings around a big square and so on. And the stores and the materials they used were spread out around this big field, if you like. And having an intranet is something. They do have an intranet, but it's in the office, in the lunchroom as well, and so on. But they would need to have their systems right where they are. So having an intranet where they're doing the welding is probably not a good idea. But they want to have it so that it's as close to the actual doing of the task as possible. So they might well have a little folder book, as much as I would prefer it to be something more dynamic that can be updated. But it can be one of those ones with plastic sleeves, and then you can put in the latest version, make sure they're kept up to date. But at least it's something that they can have right next to them when they're using it. But remember that the system is all the components. So you've also got the checklist, the forms and things that are there as well. So some of those things may be on paper or on an iPad or on a tablet of some sort or your phone, and they work very well. And it's just really working out what's the best way for people to access this. And intranets don't only have to be on a laptop. They can be on your phone or on that tablet as well. So there's a bit more flexibility
Yeah,
in
I mean, I
there.
think that's an important thing too, isn't it, to adapt to different workplaces and as well, what is the overall position of where of someone's role within the whole organization overall? How important is it to remind people regularly about to give them that perspective? Hey, John, I just want to take a break from the main part of the podcast for a moment so you can tell us a little bit more about Brain in a Box.
So Brain in a Box the idea started when I was working in corporate. I was working in a couple of major companies, internationals, and I decided that when I went out and started my first business in 2000, that it was going to use the same principles as I had done in corporate world to capture systems and to make them accessible to the team. But I thought, I've got to be able to do this for small business, small to medium business, and that's what we focus on. So we work with the business owner, with the team, to capture what the business does, and then to minimize the risk by going through and looking at all the risks that we have to manage, make sure we capture those and manage them effectively, and also to achieve the benefit. And then we make all that. That's just effectively what it is. Okay, I think it's crucial that everyone understands exactly what their role is, because there are things that go with that: decision-making, authority, expenditure. I'm able to spend this much because I have this role. and so on. There are a number of things that go with the role. So it's critical that people are really clear on what their role is so that when they are doing a process, they will realize, I don't have authority to do that. And that would be marked on the process, presumably. But we want to make it really clear that people have that understanding of roles. With the role goes a level of authority. Some certain authorities are needed for doing this. And the roles also can contain things like accreditation. So you can't drive the forklift, even though you can read the process and understand exactly what the process is. You're not allowed to do that because you don't have your forklift certificate. You can't go up there because you haven't got that particular ticket on your training. You can't go into that confined space because you don't have a confined space certificate, and so on. So there are many ways that we're looking at the role as being a holder of so many different things. Your role holds the authority within the company. Your role holds your delegated authorities to spend or to engage or to do other things. Your role holds your accreditations. It holds your right to your right or approval to do these things. There's so much in there that makes roles really important.
Yeah, and I think it is going to be different, I imagine, for every business. There's no blanket rule, is there, for this stuff?
Definitely not. There's nothing that says that, what works in one place will work in another. Even if you think about franchises, we all know McDonald's. I remember going to McDonald's at Xiangshui in the very northern part of what was Hong Kong at that stage, now still Hong Kong, but yep, part of China. And we went up there, and in the McDonald's in Xiangshui, it was a very different array. There were still hamburgers and so on, but they had chili sauce and they had a few other things which were decidedly not the same as the McDonald's, say, at Bondi. So we've got to customize things everywhere we go. The tools and the equipment that we have in one office may not be the same as what you have in that other office. So there are all these little variations, but we start with the one standard and then we move from that to say, how do we have to make this work? What do we have to do here to make it work in your workplace and so on? But if we're designing our systems from the start, obviously we're designing for this workplace, these people, these roles, these tools, these accreditations, these things that we have, everything that is there. So we have to be very
We've
cognizant
talked
of that.
about people that are in the business, they've perhaps been part of creating the systems. But talk to me about the idea of when new people come into the business, whether it's, a new role or replacing someone. How do you make them feel not just involved and contributing to the system and even understanding the system in the first place?
Yep. So one of the things I said there when I said the best way to make systems is to involve the people who perform the process to be involved in capturing it or formalizing that process. Now that's great, except that we did that last week and now we're here this week and we've got a new person coming in. So what does that mean? Does that mean we've got to go and sort of rip it all up and start again? No, we can't. And obviously, no one's going to do that. But what we will do is to try and get that ownership. So remember, we want to have everybody being accountable, and accountability comes from involvement, which leads to ownership, which leads to accountability. You can't make somebody accountable for something they don't feel they own in some way. So if we've got that new person coming into the business and starting, we want to get them to feel that they own our systems as much as we do. And the way we would recommend you do that is to say, look, I know you're brand new. I'd love you to go through our systems. And here's one I'd like to suggest you start with. Could you go through this one? Remember, don't give them the whole pack, the whole world. Could you go through this one? And I'd love it if you could highlight anything where you think, based on your experience from where you were before, is there anything you think that we could improve in here? Is there anything that should be changed, could be changed? Is there anything that you did differently before that we might adopt? And so by adopting this approach and sort of inviting them to rip it apart in effect and find fault, what we then do is to give them agency to look at it and to find changes. Now, you're still going to go through and assess any changes they suggest, any recommendations they have against the risks and the benefits to make sure we don't go and ruin it just to please them. But we may well work out some way that is better than what we were doing before, just based on that influence from them. But then the other critical thing is if we do hear that, oh, right, that'd be better. So yeah, okay, I'm going to get the guys we'll all look at that. I want you to be here tomorrow. We'll go through that with you and you can explain it. But then if we do make that change, get it out quickly and let that new person be recognized as the influencer for that change, as the person who promoted that. Because one, that boosts them up. If you get patted on the back, it's very easy for you to feel like, oh, good, I'm loved here. I'm part of it. And that's what we want. We want that ownership because the ownership will lead to accountability.
I want to just pick you up on something because you sort of glossed over it a little bit, but I think that it's an important point. So it's one thing, you've got the new person that's come in and maybe he's talking to, management who are saying, this is the way, things have been done. Oh, well, have you thought about doing it this way? Or, that's a great idea. But the part of the process that's also critical here is bringing the rest of the team on board, because you don't just want someone new and saying, well, Matt said we've got to do it this way, and we think that's a great idea, so that's the way we're going to do it, because you're going to get resistance.
Exactly. Resistance to change. And it's a standard statement, everyone loves change. Everyone hates being changed. And so we don't want to change people. We want to allow change to happen. So if that happens, you're dead right. When that new person says, I think it'd be better, have you thought about moving this to there and changing that around and so on? That's a good idea. And then now we say, let's get the team together and we'll go through that and we'll make sure we look at it carefully, again, against our risks and benefits. But then we're only going to make the change if we can demonstrate that it is worthwhile. Otherwise, we're going to get that resistance on the other side where they're going to say, oh, right, that's right. Some new guy comes in and I recommended that change 3 years ago and you never did anything about it then. You'll hear all of the sour sack stories and we don't want those. What we want is to make it so that we can have that understanding. The best idea will always be the one that we're looking at, whether it came from you. So that probably points out that we've got to have that, again, I'm just going to use the phrase continuous improvement approach everywhere. So it's all the way, your team should be coming to you with any improvements they can find anywhere along the way. And all we're doing is to invite the new person into that process. But we are going to assess everything carefully, and then we will acknowledge wherever that came from.
I love it. We're kind of talking about a system for integrating new ideas into the system. There's always systems for systems, isn't there?
That's right. Very definitely. And there's always going to be change. So if you're going to look at change, be expecting it. Don't sort of be fearing it. So we're looking at it and saying, we've got our systems. We've finally mapped the process for doing this. And now I'm going to be all ready for 3 weeks from now when somebody comes and says, John, just been looking at this. We've been doing it for a couple of weeks now and it's working pretty well, but can we do this and that? That's not an attack. That's an improvement. We've got to acknowledge that. It's not a fear point. It's a gain. I remember working with somebody and this woman came to me the day after we'd worked on a process in her area. And she came up to me and she said, John, you're going to hate me. I'm so sorry. I'm thinking, what have I done? Did I do something horrible? Did something happen? She says, I found an error on this one. And I said, well, why would I be upset? I'm pleased because that means we now make it correct. Correct systems is all I want. I don't want a plane. I don't want to build a plane where we discover that somebody knew that one of the wings was going to fall off, but didn't tell me because they were scared that I'd be upset. We've got to have that focus. We do have that focus. The system, if we can make it better, it is for the benefit of everybody. It's not a matter of holding it back and being worried about changing something or upsetting somebody. It can't be that. It can never be that.
Before you go, don't forget to hit the subscribe button on whatever platform you're tuned to. Thank you for listening to the Systems from the Box podcast featuring John Tonkin from Brain in a Box. Details on how to contact John and his team are in the show notes, along with other valuable links you don't want to miss. This podcast is produced by Podcast Done For You. I'm Anthony Pearl. We look forward to your company on the next episode.